If you're tired of the standard business and marketing fundamentals, frameworks, and funnels, you need a little mischief. Get ready to turn up the volume on the CEO Mischief Maker podcast, where you access conversations with seasoned business owners who have smashed through mindset barriers, innovated the standard boring business and marketing playbooks, and executed future-paced strategies with bleeding-edge tools and tactics to micro-fail their way into massive success and growth. We are Mindset Impact Strategic Catalysts helping innovative entrepreneurs focus. We are CEO Mischief Makers. Ready to make a little mischief? I hope you're enjoying my conversation so far with Peter Lisoskie. As you can tell, Peter and I have worked together for a while and have developed a rapport. And I'll tell you, he creates good software. This particular software that he's creating, I am using myself, and it is exceptionally good. If you do any kind of video marketing at all, if you use videos online in social media, if you use videos in your lead magnets and your webinars and your challenges and your quizzes, anything like that, you can use his software called Relatable to engage and re-engage your video viewers so that they are no longer just an IP address watching a video and you have no clue who they are or what they want. You can actually add your data gathering content right overlaid on your video so that you connect, you collect data, and you convert. This software is beyond anything I've seen. It actually has an AI generated script generator for any type of video script you would like to create. And when you create that script, it has a built-in teleprompter to automatically put that teleprompter right on your phone so that you can now join the vertical video age. I'm telling you, if you at all want to engage your video viewers, and if they fall off, if they actually abandon your video, just like an abandoned cart, if you want to bring them right back to the place they left off in the video, use Relatable. So I will have a link for you to opt into the waitlist. It is actually, depending on when you're listening to this, in end of April 2023, there's a waitlist. This will be launched in June 2023 and live to the public. But right now, I highly recommend you get on that waitlist, and you can go to callmemkj.com/Peter. Peter Lisoskie is the CEO. He's my guest. So we're going to leave it at callmemkj.com/PETER and get on that wait list, because there are so many things happening. The changes, the updates that Peter and his dev team have made are just really incredible. I have been blessed to be part of some future-paced software launches in my conversational marketing adventure over the last 6 years. And I am very excited about this one. And I hope you join me for the waitlist. Callmemkj.com/Peter. See you there. Hey there, CEO Mischief Makers. Welcome back to the conversation with the amazing Peter Lisoskie, a very good friend of mine. If you have not listened to the first conversation when we talk about mindset, you got to go back there, because there are some stories that Peter shares that you really need to hear, because we're going to now take it the next step. And Peter, you talked last time about the internal struggle and the internal courage you have to have, not external. We're not racing into burning buildings and saving children. We are racing into the burning building of our mind that basically tells us, run now, don't do this. Or it tells us you're going to drown in that river. So we gotta face that internal obstacle. So how do you, to me, I think we need curiosity more than anything else when we innovate something. And just to make sure everyone knows, when I talk about innovation, I'm not talking about the Steve Jobs and the Elon Musks of the world. I'm talking about the standard processes we all do every day, all day, that are human processes that have been tried and tested for thousands of years.
and we innovate them to bring them up to date into our world. So tell me how you take that internal struggle, use curiosity, and actually innovate software development.
Well, so I think that's really key. And, I guess for people, I think, and I don't, it's not just me. I'm no different than anybody else, but I think really to be a true entrepreneur means you're truly curious. And the other thing too is you're willing to pull the trigger and not have analysis paralysis, because the analysis paralysis ties into the internal struggle, which is I'm afraid just to pull the trigger and go. Because heaven knows, both of us, you and I, and a bunch of people listening, we've had, misstarts and rabbit holes and stuff you go down, right? So, but I'm a naturally curious person. Here's an example. So because I just like finding out about things, this started about 2003. I was a vice president of product strategy for a consulting firm up in Seattle, and we were doing strategic roadmaps. A lot of it was like brain chemistry, brain science type companies and things like that. So we do these week-long things, and we get in there and we map out. So we productize with a bunch of chemists, they're brilliant, but they don't know how to take a product to market. So anyway, I'm sitting in this room and I'm talking to the CEO and the COO and all the people are there and the scientists are there, and we're going through our process that I developed here for this week-long thing. And I started talking because, throughout it all, I started my career at Fluke and then I moved on to other companies, but it was always about voice of the customer, listen to the customer. And MIT created this, and I know Harvard had a little bit to do with it, but we brought in the experts, and we listened to them. So we're doing this kind of stuff. So I was talking about, voice of the customer and how you sell benefits and things like that. And there's a couple of these guys in the corner of the room, and I heard them whispering. They were looking at each other and they were whispering, and it caught my eye. So I was like, well, that's kind of strange. So we had a coffee break. About 15 minutes later, I went to the back of the room there and I said, hey, I introduced myself. And when I was talking about voice of the customer, I saw you guys were kind of talking to each other. And so what I found out is these two guys were a couple of neuroscientists, and they had done a lot of EEG and fMRI studies. And they said, well, I hate to tell you this, but that is not how people buy. They do not buy based on benefits and features. They buy based on emotion. And so my natural reaction, being curious, I said, well, hell, can I take you to the Met and go have a steak and drinks? I need to find out more about this, because I was naturally curious, right? So I went there and I listened to these guys for 3 hours. I about fell out of my chair. And they were presenting, data studies. This is not like NLP experiential. This is like actual brain studies. And they were talking about the blood flow and the chemistry, like in fMRI studies with certain stimulus inputs. And I'm going, this is fascinating. I said, can I hang out with you guys and learn? And they go, sure. Because they had their office was in Seattle. So I would go hang out with these guys and start learning. And long story short, I created this whole system, which then I used. So I left that company. That's when I started my construction company I was talking about in the first episode. And I built that company. At that time, I was about $1 million. I built it up to over $6 million in annual revenue, because I went out and perfected this system on how to put a person in a buying mood, right? So what's interesting, this is kind of how all this stuff is so funny, because then as we go through life, I created this course. It's up online. 1,000 people have done it. I've never written the book, but then somehow you and I ran into each other, and then you started talking about conversational marketing, right? But really, conversational marketing is about how do you, in your own way, you were understanding how to access innately what is the right way to interact and talk with people using your methodology. And then
Get them to take action.
Get them to take action. Yeah. All I did was I said, okay, Mary's got something here. This is really cool. We were talking back and forth, and that's when, I told you chatbots were not where it's going to happen, and you got mad at me, but hey, whatever. But the thing about it,
I still love you.
Yeah, I know. But the thing about it is in everything, it's the curiosity and innovation, but good innovation mimics human behavior. So whatever we're going to do in technology and software, it has to mimic human behavior and how humans do things. Right now, we have a lot of things out there like social media and things that do not mimic human behavior. You guys may get mad at me for this, but I do not like social media because it is the farthest from human behavior that I have ever seen, with all these fake friends and all this stuff. That is not the way we act as humans.
Yeah.
So that to me it fascinates me and drives me forward, is like, how can I create something where people can use either to create a personal movement for people or a business movement, but it's tied to how humans build relationships and act with each other.
Yes. And okay, thank you for that. That was amazing. And for those of you listening, before you turn this conversation off because you get pissed that Peter just said social media doesn't act like humans, let me just clarify, and I'd love for you to clarify as well. We're not talking about social media not doing anything human. We're talking about social media not providing any positive human interaction. It unfortunately feeds on the most negative parts of human behavior and human interaction. If you don't have as many friends, you feel bad. If somebody doesn't like your post, you feel bad. If someone leaves a negative comment, you feel bad. And if a whole bunch of people, all of a sudden your post goes viral, then you're happy. So all of those kinds of things they're not human. We don't, my neighbor, I don't care if my neighbor likes my post, we talk about our neighborhood and we build a relationship with each other. We don't just go across the fence and talk about whether his trees are better looking than my trees. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Let me know what you mean.
And I agree with you. The thing is, like, here's an example. Other than there are connections with social media, and I'm not, look, here's everything exists for a reason. Right. But I'll bring up one thing. If you haven't watched The Social Dilemma on Netflix, you probably should. But here's the thing. I call it the red dot syndrome, right? Red dot was created as the notification red dot, right? We all have it on our phone. We have it on our desktop. That is a dopamine addiction. They know they're doing it. They addict you to staying involved in that situation. So there's the thing is, with any technology, we're entering a whole new realm called artificial intelligence, and we have opened up a massive Pandora's box. You've heard, Elon Musk and others, like Mira's mentioned, have made their statements and things. But I do think there's good and there's bad with technology. I think it's the founders or the leadership to say, hey, what is the appropriate ethical and with integrity approach we should be taking? Not just go, I'm just going to let the wheels fall off the bus because we're just going to go get as much revenue as we can and make our stakeholders fat and happy. That's part of the reason why I don't work for public corporations anymore, because the problem is, at the end of the day, people are not the most important asset, and they are in my company. So I want to make sure that people are taken care of. Not, hey, when the going gets bad, let's just have another layoff because that'll make our bottom line look better.
Gee, how many social media companies just went through that scenario?
Well, look, I went through that with hardware companies too. It's one of these. It's hard. It's hard to say, look, you know what it is, Mary? It's hard for leadership and executives to look themselves in the mirror and go, maybe I'm not smart enough to figure out how to get out of this thing. So I got to come up with a way to be smarter or surround myself with smarter people so that we can weather this bad storm instead of just arbitrarily cutting people to make my bottom line look better.
Yeah.
Now, yes, I agree. Sometimes companies get too fat and they need to trim a little bit. So I'm not saying, hey, hold on to your people at all costs. But you gotta say, hey, there's a better, especially in today's world with all the technology we have and capabilities, there's a better way to do it.
Yeah. I think. Yeah. And I love what you said about the red dot. I got to tell you, one of the first things I tell people in Bot Academy in my training program is turn off all your notifications. If you just turn them off, turn off all your notifications, unsubscribe to every blog RSS feed, unsubscribe to every podcast, turn everything off. Because if you're going to actually create, you cannot be habitually consuming. You can't.
Yeah.
You only have a certain amount of time. So I have all my notifications off. So it was a real eye opener.
Yeah, I know that, Mary, because you made me very clear on that.
sorry. Yes, I
No,
don't
but
respond. It's
no, it's
terrible.
okay. Mary told me, she says, I ain't talking to you till noon because that's the only time I check my messages. Like, okay.
It's just, but it was a funny, it was a, yes, it was a rude awakening because Facebook just added a feature for your Facebook group. So when you have a private Facebook group, they added a chat function for the group. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is cool. And of course, Facebook does its thing. It presents it to you and then takes you through the scenario of setting it up. So I'm going through, I'm like, okay, and I've got a group with 22,000 people in it. And so
Yeah.
I'm setting up this chat and it says, would you like to automatically add the people in your group who are the most active members to the chat? And I'm like, okay. So I just said, yes. People were so pissed because they were getting, because of course, people in this group are all over the world. So they were getting messages on their phone at like 3 a.m.
Probably out they were sleeping. Yeah.
They were sleeping, but they have their freaking phone next to their bed and they have notifications on. Now, come on.
Yep.
Turn them off. It's really not that important.
It's crazy.
I'm sorry. So I was like, all right, we're done with this chat thing. I'm not doing it. We're done. And people need that dopamine hit. So how have you then taken that idea, all of the things that you've learned? Because I mean, obviously we can't talk about everything you've learned because you're freaking brilliant. But how have you taken that information, your brain chemistry, your knowledge of what makes people act, your knowledge of wanting to create things that actually make the world better and help people do things, and now you're innovating software, and I know you're looking into the future to not just do what you're doing right now, but you're setting yourself up for what's coming, what's next. How are you doing that? What makes you do that? What part of your curiosity pushes you to do that?
Well, I think that goes all the way back to when I first started traveling globally, Mary, because, it was interesting. I have been all over Asia, all over Europe, all over South America, all over the United States. But the thing, and I suggest, I mean, heck, if you haven't got out of your own state, guys, you should travel around the United States at least. And then if you can, I know it's expensive, but if you can, go to another country or two. What I realized, Mary, was interesting back in my early 30s or maybe actually late 20s when I started traveling is I go to like Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia. I go to China. I was going to China in the early 80s before. I mean, people looked at me like I was some kind of alien because people just didn't. It wasn't westernized. Nobody went there. Yeah. But the thing is, what's interesting when I traveled around the world, you have all these different cultures. You have different ethnic backgrounds, different languages, right? But the thing, and I don't know, I stumbled onto one night. I was sitting with a family because they invited me over, and I was over. I think it was in Europe. I was in Scotland. And we started talking about just basic stuff like, family values and kindness and love and fairness and all these universal principles. And it dawned on me on that night that even though these people grew up entirely different from me, they have the same universal values. I tested in Abu Dhabi, same. I tested it in Asia, same. South America, same. So it got me to think about, okay, this is very interesting because there's a lot of commonality, different religions, different creeds, but the baseline of everything as a human condition is the same. So then I said, well, being my curious self, I wonder if we could put that to technology and how could we mimic that sameness in human condition into technology and software. So now, as you know, we have our technology roadmap where we're going. And really nowadays, that's why we started what we did with this next platform is, you look around the world and most everybody has a phone and most everybody is either watching or listening. They're not, even though I got books behind me here, they're not doing a lot of reading or they're listening to books, right?
Yeah.
So you have to look and say, okay, where are we at in the progression of technology? I've talked to you several times about, well, hey, I'd like to do something in hologramics, but it's kind of like Netflix when they first started. If people are old enough to remember, Netflix started with DVDs in the mail. because the suit was 3 sizes too big. They couldn't do streaming because we didn't have that cloud capability at that time, right? So while we project into the future and say, okay, this is what we can do to create a movement in software and do it for the benefit of humankind, isn't that, you know, about our future direction, it's not quite ready yet, right? So we have to go with, okay, part of innovation is saying, okay, what can I do that matches and mimics human behavior as technology is right now?
Okay, hold on. If your mindset was shifted, you were inspired to innovate, and you were spurred into action, don't just move on with your day. Focus, my friend, and take a few minutes to visit ceomischiefmaker.com to learn more about the value that was shared with you today. Please act now and create some CEO mischief of your own.